ceiling on the nose.
Welcome back to the afternoon policy sessions on September 21st. Gary, what's up first?
Thank you, Chair Smith. First session is new county courthouse project update. Courthouse project manager Gary Barth is here to present. Welcome, Gary. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for having me this afternoon. When we last met, we decided that it would be productive and beneficial to you for us to have a quick update every 6 weeks to keep you informed on the progress in the project. And so my intent is kind of share with you what has occurred since we last met and give you a little bit of a preview for what's coming up. And very exciting development since we last met. As you saw in my email correspondence earlier, we received 8 proposals, requests or statement of qualifications in response to our request for qualifications. We were seriously hoping for 4 to 6, and we received 8. Our consultants were absolutely blown away by that. They said it was one of the best responses to a P3 project that they've seen.
Really?
And I would say that every team had capabilities to do a project of this complexity and scale. But we had an evaluation committee with input from our consultants. Every proposal was hundreds of pages long. Folks on the committee, Elizabeth, myself, and others, spent days going through each of the proposals and making notes and scoring each of them on a 100-point scale. And then we met with our consultants and got their input, factored that in, went back and rescored. There were 2 firms that stood out above everybody else, and we were all consistent on that. So that was the easy decision to advance those 2. With the time, the effort we spent was how do we find the third? And there were really 2 teams that were kind of in that next tier of competing for that third slot. We went through a rigorous analysis of that and ultimately made our decision and ended up with Fingate PCL Progress Partners. Each of these firms are a consortium of architects, construction, facility management firms, financiers, equity partners, and they formed separate LLCs or project companies just for this project. Very typical in a commercial development approach. So the names of these teams are the LLC they basically have formed as a project company. And so it's Fingate PCL, Plenary Justice, Red Soils, and Red Soils Justice Partners, Balfour Beatty. And they're all very, very qualified firms. And they're all quite capable. And we're really excited to begin this next phase now, because now we've got the top 3 of 8 will now be competing against one another to deliver you the most innovative design at the within our affordability ceiling, at or below, and achieve all of our requirements. Those 3 teams, the procurement, Ryan Rice he's been absolutely fantastic on Elizabeth's staff with a lot of workload that he's got on his plate, and he has been a champion on helping us advance this process. He published on Oregon Buys, he published the final scoring list and the top 3. We notified the top 3 and we issued them the request for proposals. That is a document that's got hundreds of pages and a multitude of appendices and technical specs. So everything you can imagine on defining what this courthouse building needs to be is defined in that RFP and those appendices. We also have a draft project agreement that's part of that RFP. And that draft project agreement is what you will ultimately execute with the preferred proposer next summer. And that agreement is, as I mentioned before, it's really 4 agreements in one. It's a financing agreement, it's a design architectural agreement, it's a construction agreement, and it's a long-term facility management agreement. And that is also hundreds of pages long that we've spent an inordinate amount of time working with our consultants to develop these drafts. So during this next phase, we will anticipate getting 30% design by these 3 competing firms with their cost estimates. We'll refine the RFP so that when we come to the end, we'll have a very specific RFP that each of their proposals will respond to, and a draft project agreement that any of the three will be willing to execute if they're chosen to move forward. We're kicking it off with one-on-one, 60-minute one-on-one meetings virtually next week with each of the three project teams, where we will just go through some ground rules about how we're going to handle protocols, how we're going to handle requests for information and responses, so that all the three teams get very consistent messages from us. Nobody gets any information that everybody else doesn't get, so we keep a level playing field throughout. And we've got Procurement, County Council, and our outside legal counsel providing the protocols for us. After that, we will have our first actual on-site meetings. We're going to have one-on-one meetings with each of the three teams. Each meeting will be an all-day event. They'll bring in their entire team. I'm expecting 15 to 20 folks per team, representing all their various disciplines. And we'll spend the day with them, and it's really their meeting to make sure that they have true clarity on what our expectation is as they go through this design process. We're also engaging the City of Oregon City. They're the jurisdiction that'll approve all the land use and permitting. They've graciously agreed to participate in the one-on-one meetings, so if any of the three teams have any questions about land use permitting, anything else, that what we want to ensure is that whatever these 30% designs that they work on will actually be compliant and permittable by the city. So we're getting ahead of that very early in the process. We'll have a series, we're going to have 3 one-on-one meetings, the one coming up October 26th, 7th, and 8th, another one in early December, and then a final one in January. And through those series of one-on-one meetings, we'll continue this refinement and the cost estimating and the design requirements. And ultimately, the goal then is to pick a preferred proposer through a very extensive scoring process that we've already established, and then bring that preferred proposer to the board for approval. And the goal is to execute a project agreement by next summer. And that would officially kick off the project. They would move into final design. They'd take that 30% design that won the competition, and they would spend the next several months completing that design, and then move into pre-construction and then construction, with the target date of 2025 still for the completion. So that's kind of where it's moving along very well. I've had requests for debriefs with 3 of the teams that were not chosen. And I had my first one today, and it was an international call. I had the heads of these companies from France and Spain and a couple other places all wanting to know what they could have done better or different. And so again, it was a very informative process. I'm limited on what I can share with them as far as our scoring approach, but they all appreciated the debrief, and we'll keep, they're disappointed, of course, but 7 teams are going to be disappointed by the end of the day. It's sort of like these reality shows that you see. There's only one winner at the end of the day. So,
Or a baseball tournament.
5 people have been disappointed. 5 teams are disappointed. 3 are advancing, and one of those will be a winner. So I'm really excited. I think you've got a world-class teams competing for your project.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that we had 8 different firms interested in Clackamas County. Also, Gary, who was on the team selection that did the scoring?
The evaluation committee consisted of myself, Elizabeth, Chris Story from Water Environment Services, Jeff Jorgensen from Facilities, and Jim Edwards, our outside consultant, citizen volunteer who had the extensive experience in commercial development.
Yeah, you sent me his bio. He does have extensive experience. Thank you for that. Yeah, that in itself would be challenging, I think, to go through the scoring on that.
It was, it was an interesting exercise.
Wow.
A lot of us have been through RFPs before, but nothing quite this extensive. This is
Wow.
but it was fascinating too. And
Was it?
Very impressive proposals.
Good, good. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith. Thanks, Gary, for coming and giving us this update. Love to hear the progress. I've done some emailing back and forth with you. The prior board had briefings on issues regarding whoever the contractor is about certain types of agreements, and Commissioner Schrader worked with Workforce regarding the career, C2P2, Career to
Pathways
Pathways.
project, yep.
What is the C2P Pathways? So within those project labor or project
Construction
agreements.
Careers Pathway Project.
There you go. So the idea of apprenticeship and making sure that there's efforts to have minority and women in the workforce and really promoting those avenues for jobs. What part of those labor agreements where does that land in the
That will
process?
land in the project agreement, the draft project agreement, that we've already incorporated it into the draft project agreement as far as the C2P2 framework that this board adopted last November. We don't have specific targets, we have aspirational targets over 5 years, so that's what we provided. Each of the 8 firms that responded know that they need to provide a response to the C2P2 framework. So these 3 that are advancing know that as well. So that will be part, each one of them have already identified ways that they're going to engage the underserved community and apprenticeship programs. I'm very hopeful, since we didn't provide a mandatory minimum or anything, I'm very hopeful that they will actually propose targets that may exceed what we might have even requested.
Okay.
So we'll see that through the competition. So that's another element they'll be competing on, is how well they address the C2P2 framework.
Okay, one other question. I'm just becoming aware, and I need to do more research. I don't have it all, but I'm wondering if you're aware of an effort to provide preference for veterans in these types of projects as part of labor?
That has
Or
not, we have
project
not
agreements?
identified that as a specific requirement.
Okay, I'm learning about it. I was just, maybe Paul knows, because you don't know about it.
I didn't hear about
Okay,
that
I'm
one.
going to do some more research, and then we'll talk. I just know that there's been an effort while there are minorities, women wanting to build that workforce. Also for veterans, there's an effort going on that I think would be really great if we could prioritize
I
that.
think there's state legislation to that effect.
You know what? That might be why I know this. Do you know?
There
A
was
what,
state, I
Martha?
can't remember the bill, but I think that there is state legislation to that effect, because I remember working on it back in the day. So I think we just have to check it.
Yeah.
This is a
Fine.
public building under Oregon
Right.
statute, so this will
Right.
comply with BOLI and all the other
Okay,
public
yeah.
building requirements.
But BOLI would be the place to start to find out where that is and how they're implementing, I think.
I think the biggest challenge, we want to incorporate and embrace all these opportunities to get folks into the trades and everything else.
Yes.
At the same time, we have a tremendous labor shortage on a project of this scale. Just finding the labor is going to be a challenge for them.
Yep.
So it'll be really interesting to see how we proceed. And that was part of kind of what went into the evaluation a little bit, is what these firms were proposing of how they would create their labor shed, their project teams.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Gary, I'm looking at your ratings here, and the top 2 tied at 88.6. I find that
It was really interesting, yeah.
fascinating. There was 5 different people judging this, and the score came out
86 points, yeah,
in
exactly.
the end that way. So,
Those 2 were stellar, and then there were a couple that we were able to kind of eliminate fairly quickly. And that left 4 in the middle, and then of those, we separated those pretty quickly
sure.
to 2, and then we just really focused on those 2 that were really close for third.
Yes, that would be Elliston, Griffin, Swinderland, and then the number 3 is Red Soils Justice. Okay, well, good. Or Clackamas, let's see. Yes, okay. Well, very interesting. Any other comments or questions for Gary on this? We thank you for the update. We look forward to moving ahead, and I really look forward to the public engagement in this.
We've already got the 6-week updates already on your calendars.
They are, I saw
Going
those.
through July of next year.
At what point do we do public engagement? Next year sometime?
I think so, once we have the preferred proposer, because right now we're just getting 30% design with this
Yes.
competition, so there's not a lot of public engagement needs at this moment, but once we pick the preferred proposer, then they'll basically be going through the land use and the permitting process with the Oregon City, which comes with all the public engagement, including the surrounding neighborhoods, all the special interest groups. We don't want to subject all 3 teams to that because there's a cost to that, but we
Right.
definitely want the preferred chosen team then to go through all those logistics.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Paul, you have a question?
Yeah, so when it comes to getting a first stab at cost and the recent escalation in construction cost, I saw the timeline there. That's going to be next year sometime?
Yeah, I was just going to say financial proposals due April 20th, but there's an interim financial due November 10th. So we're going to get our first interim financial on November 10th.
Right, so I won't state which project, but there's a couple projects where we got the report back and we held those projects for a while, put on pause button on those, and then the materials went down and perhaps they're still going down a little bit. So we have these snapshots in time. I'm just wondering if we are at a place in November where we anticipate either a rise or a fall, would there be a calling for a more updated one? I mean, because that seems to be something that could impact our budget if some of those construction costs are still really high, right? I mean, when do we exceed our actual budget? I mean,
Based on,
if so.
well, we have the affordable ceiling that we will stay under regardless. So anything that's proposed over the affordability ceiling will be rejected of the 3 proposals. So we know that at least the proposals have to come in under your affordability ceiling. Our desire then is that it's a mix. We're going to not take the low bid, we're going to take the best value. And so that's part of our whole scoring process on the final is one may be slightly higher, but the value of the project is much greater from a long-term life cycle basis, et cetera. So what we're really hoping for is that we get a really good value cost on a high-performance building. That would be the perfect mix for us among these 3 teams. But none of them can exceed the affordability ceiling. So we'll get that interim, and then we'll continue to work with those from November until the preferred proposer is chosen, and then it's when we execute the project agreement is when the costs get locked in at that point. So July of next year is when you would actually lock in the pricing.
I have a question. Are you done, Paul? I have a question regarding Kane Road out here and possibly Beaver Creek Road. Has Oregon City signaled any thoughts about the capacity of those 2 roads with the addition of the courthouse?
It definitely, we're required as a condition of approval from when DSB was built. There was a condition of approval to do a traffic analysis either on the next big project, which would be the courthouse, or within 10 years. The 10-year timeline came up last year. So that's already mandated, so Jeff's team is already ordering the traffic analysis, and that will extend all the way out to the bypass and the impact of the courthouse and the Red Soils campus development on primarily Warner, Milne, and Beaver Creek. We know it's probably going to trigger signalization where the new proposed loop road is going to come out onto Warner, Milne, and potentially a relocation of the entrance to this side of the campus off the curve and a little farther to the east with a signal, and a potential signal at Library Court. So that's all anticipated. We've got it all in the project plan from the work that Sarah Architects did for us as part of the Red Soils Master Plan update a few years ago. All of these 3 teams have those technical proposals.
Signalization is one thing. What about extra capacity is what I'm concerned about.
Yeah,
Because
Warner-
right now, the citizens use this Beaver Creek Road as a bypass. They don't necessarily, it's just a bypass. And getting in and out of the campus, sometimes you have to wait for traffic, which, is fine. But I can foresee that being impacted with greater volume.
Yeah, this stretch of, I think Warner and Milne's got some widening requirement for sidewalks over by where the OSU building was going to go. And that was part of that OSU approval. Beaver Creek, my understanding is it needs to be widened such that it can have the vehicular traffic as well as on-street parking on Beaver Creek Road.
Oh, wow.
As well as bike lanes and bus. So the widening will probably occur on the opposite side where the field is there and not cut into the campus, but most likely Beaver Creek along this stretch of the curve will need to be widened as part of this project.
Is that going to require extra purchase of easements or anything?
I'm sorry?
Is that going to require extra right-of-way acquisition?
We already own the right-of-way.
Good. Excellent.
And we've tried to factor in that cost into our projections.
Okay, good.
Even though the development company, the project company will be looking to them to build, to do the construction of the campus and the loop road and the new surface parking that we anticipate across the
Right,
way
right.
over here.
Okay, well, wonderful. Any other questions or thoughts for the presenter today?
Yeah, I was just Googling around, and I found the site of the effort. It's helmets to hard hats, and it's all right. I emailed it to you, and I also emailed it to Martha because she's our workforce folks. I had heard a presentation about this, and it was pretty inspiring, and thought there might be a nexus or opportunity
Okay.
for as we look
I'll
forward
share that with the
to,
project team.
yeah. So I got it to you. So thank you.
So I think that's all we have.
Okay?
Thank you very
Thank you
much,
very
Gary,
much.
for coming in.
And of course, if there's any need to convene with the board in between these 6-week meetings, we'll definitely let Mr. Schmidt know, and we'll get it on your calendar if we need direction. Otherwise, assume everything's proceeding smoothly until our next 6-week update.
Great, thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Next session is Performance Clackamas Strategic Plan for the Board of Commissioners, the Good Government Budget Goal. This is your second presentation out of 10. We're reviewing all 10 of your strategic results over the next 3 months to give you an update on how the staff is doing in implementing your goal. This goal is, by July 1st, 2022, the county's budget will be structurally sound, sustainable, and 100% tied to results. Elizabeth Comfort is a finance director, and she is the lead for the staff team working on this goal. So Elizabeth, please go ahead.
Thank you, Gary. Good afternoon. As promised, I'm back. And with some more detail on our budget and software, I'll fill you in as well. So as Gary said, we are operating under a new strategic plan that you guys gave to us, and this is a little different. We started on one last year, and this has been modified, and I think it's really appropriate, especially in these times, to be structurally sound, sustainable, and 100% tied to results. Those are metrics. Those are, in fact, ARPA, as we present our quarterly reports, those reports are also being tied to metrics and to results. And that's how you decide if you're making progress, right? You need to have these milestones. So this is really good. Let me start with our members of this group. Sherry Reedman, of course, is our representative from HR, with Everett Wild from County Administration, and Nancy is part of this team, as well as our Treasury partners, Brian Nava and Nancy Wilson. And then, of course, my co-partner is Sandra Montoya, our budget manager. So I'm going to just hit some highlights on this 2-page report that you've received. I've added some things I want to just share some additional color to it as well. Under key strategies, we really want to create a system and department that is effective, efficient, and dependable. I always like to say in my finance career, we want to be transparent, we want to be accurate, and we want to be timely. And so how do we do that? We need to have some tools in place and systems, and that's what is going to allow us to meet this overarching performance goal for the county. What we've been doing is integrating our new chart of accounts in the various modules. I talked about that this morning. We have several modules that the county actually owns, and we are working to get those implemented. Right now, we are wrapping up the chart of accounts. We created out of 8 different chart of accounts. We now have a consolidated one. And so that needs to be added to several different systems within the county. HR has a system, technology services, there are mainframe of the county's technology, so they also need to have it and integrate it in various modules. Our general ledger, our future coming accounts receivable module, and also our procurement module that we'll be getting to manage our contracts. So the chart of accounts is really a key strategy. It is the core. And then also we have good communication. We are highly ramping up high communication with all of the departments, because they need to be our partners in all these efforts. And also through that, improving our communication of these financials through monthly financial reports. We are going to be kind of taking a step back on the monthly financial reports. As I go through, I'll explain we've had some challenges, but our goal is to have the county have consistent, reportable tools. So when we go to the audit committee, we can be very transparent and say that we are monitoring our expenditures against our appropriations. So when we come out at the end of the year, we're within our appropriations. So the financial reports and that monitoring is a key strategy for meeting the transparency as well. Also, we've brought on Opengov, which is a budget software, and that is going to be tied directly with our PeopleSoft Oracle software. They will actually merge every night, so the financials that go into the PeopleSoft will be uploaded into our budget software. The budget software has a different tool, it's a different purpose, but it is a partner with our financial software. The budget software allows us to put in kind of our estimates, our projections for the year, and helps us learn what our trends are. It's more of an analysis tool as well as a budgeting software. But it partners with the ERP software, because we need data to create those trends. So those are key strategies to get us to where we want to go. And these metrics, there are systems and tools. Our staffing levels, they are a challenge right now, but that is part of the operations to enter the data. To get timeliness, we need to have the data in timely. We're working with all of the departments. They've just partnered with us so well of submitting invoices to be paid, invoices to be billed, and now our responsibility in the finance department as a central department is to enter those into the system. So then we're looking at the monthly finance reports. We can see this data timely. Right now we have some challenges with that because we are such a large department. So we're, as everyone is, we're struggling with keeping our staffing numbers at 100%. And so getting that information in is delayed right now. Talked about the AR module that's coming. Let's see, activities completed to date. We've already said the new chart of accounts, and then also with our budget for this 21-22 fiscal year, 2021 fiscal year, we've used the new software, the Opengov software in the MFR format. So we're able to run reports with each program for each department, what strategic goal that you guys have for us, where does it fall, each of these programs. So we're able to run reports based on where our priorities are for the county. And that is going to be, that is the platform and the leading up to being 100% tied to metrics. So that's the start. So we've got a good start. It's just a longer process because we need to get all these tools up and running. Let's see. So let's talk about activities. Our second quarter, October to December, we are now working on the upcoming forecast model. We've had to update it, and we'll be presenting that at our next budget committee meeting, which is in October 19th. So that's coming up. We are in the process of designing and building the time and labor system that we already own in PeopleSoft, and our budget team is working very closely with our TS team and our consultant to build this. We have 8 different unions, and so each one of those unions have very particular specific hourlies and add-ons, and so all those need to be tested with holiday pay and overtime pay. And so that is a very tedious and detailed work that is taking much longer than we'd anticipated. So that implementation will be coming on later this fall, and we'll have more information, in fact, after this week. Our TS department is working with the consultants. They're calling it a marathon week. Every afternoon, they're working from noon to 5, hitting all the issues and nailing those and cleaning those up. So it's all hands on deck this week. So that's very exciting for the county. We've been using a secondary time and labor system, which doesn't talk to PeopleSoft. So we've had to do, each payroll requires about 1,100 journal entries every pay period to get that data appropriately into PeopleSoft. So the teams are looking forward to not having to do those journal entries. Also, we are going to be updating the cost allocations. We've had some challenges in looking at the cost allocation models that we've been using for central services. How do those get allocated out? I think they're split 32 different ways, so we're looking at what is the best way to do that. Do we hire even a consultant? Is there software to do that? And so our budget manager, Sandra Montoya, is really leading the charge in that. And we hope to have a written response. We want to update Nancy and Gary this Thursday on really where we are at and what our plan of attack is and timeline. So what is working well? I would say communication. We've had several new starts from the finance department and talking to our partners through finance liaison groups. We've asked one individual to represent each of the departments. So we have 24 people typically on the screen, and we keep it limited to that to have high-level discussions, because then it allows for more openness and more Q&A back and forth. And then they go and they report back to their teams what they've learned, the challenges that we're addressing. One of the things that they have been asking and that we're going to bring to them is we have updated several policies, and we're still in the process of some more policies from the finance department, is just do like a policy hour. What are the ones that we've brought to date? You're going to be seeing debt, a new debt policy or an updated debt policy. You've already approved a travel policy. Our reserves and contingency, I think that's set up for the final stage with coming to you guys as well. Our capital assets, we haven't had an updated capital assets policy, I think, since 1991. So we're working on that, bringing it up to best practices. Gift card policy is coming out soon, and then we've done a suspicious mail policy, just in the light of the times with mail. It's good practice to have all that. And that went to all the departments. That wasn't a board level. That was more of a practice policy. So that communication, I think, is going really well. The teams are listening to the other employees in the other departments, trying to understand what their needs are, really understand the businesses of each of the departments. So we can, when we're setting up our policies and standards and practices, we know how they will work with them. We do have several barriers and challenges, a lot of projects at the same time. And I was sharing with Gary, we have this team to do the daily activities. Then, you've seen that skit, I think it was Saturday Night Live, where you go to the next window, it's the same guy, right? Then you take that team, and they're the same team that does the monthly closing. Then you take that same team, and they're the ones that do the audit. And then that's the same team that is doing the implementation work. So we're challenged that we have great staff, but they're the ones tasked with all these. So that has been a challenge. So to save them from burnout, which we don't want, and we have experience, we're slowing that train down a little bit and looking at what we can accomplish successfully with the teams. And then also, of course, learning curve. I think we're up to like 21 to 24 digits in our new chart of accounts. So that's quite a bit longer than our previous one. But what that gives us is details. So when we want to run a report on grants, specifically a specific grant, what that activity code is, we have the opportunity to learn, going back 100% tied to results. Well, we can do that because we're going to have a chart of accounts. We have a chart of accounts that is going to provide information to let us know where we are at specifically. And I think I'll stop there.
Great. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. That was very comprehensive. Commissioners, were you able to follow along in the report? The report was very good. Do we have any comments or questions for Elizabeth right now?
Okay,
I didn't know that.
That
Sorry
was
about
great. And now it's time to dance.
Yeah, there you go. Very good. Good timing, Martha.
Sorry about that. Didn't even know it was.
You've left us speechless.
Oh, good.
Well, your card's up, Sonia.
Oh.
I wasn't sure if the card was up because you had a question, so.
That was from eons ago.
Gary, you have any comments?
No, staff is working hard on all 10 of your results, as is Elizabeth and her team on this one. So
Thank you very much for coming today.
absolutely, thank you.
thank you, Elizabeth. Caroline, are you ready? I mean, we keep moving forward. We're ahead of schedule, but if that's okay.
Absolutely.
All right, the next policy session is 2021 Small Grants Recommendation. Caroline Hill, Policy Advisor in County Administration, has been leading this effort for quite a while and has done so again this year. Caroline, please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. Administrator Schmidt. My name is Caroline Hill, and I am here to present the 2021 Small Grants Recommendations. This is the 13th year of the program, and this year the Budget Committee approved $250,000. As we continue to be affected by COVID, many organizations have had to adjust their processes in order to continue to provide services to our most vulnerable populations. Because of that, we encouraged applicants to establish partnerships to increase community impact. Additionally, last year, the BCC approved additional criteria instructing the Small Grants Committee to use an equity lens when reviewing the applications. Lastly, we continue to give priority to those projects servicing the Community Prosperity Collaborative areas, formerly known as Equity Pilot Areas, which is North Clackamas, Canby, and Estacada. At the same time, we ensured that the monies were dispersed throughout the county and to impact diverse groups. You may recall that the Collaboratives project came to conclusion over the summer. Therefore, I will recommend that this year be the last one that we use them as a criteria. In an effort to reach as many populations in our community, the application materials were translated into 5 languages: Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, Russian, and Korean. This year, we received 69 applications totaling $759,990.40. Last year, we received 78 applications totaling $873,411. Of the 69 applications that we received, 19 were new applicants. A committee was formed to review applications and formulate the recommendations. This year, the committee consisted of Everett Wild, Commission Policy Advisor, Philip Mason Joyner, Public Health Director, Jennifer Harvey, Training Services Manager for Health, Housing, and Human Services, Carlina Arango, Sustainability Analyst for the Department of Transportation and Development, and myself. I would like to point out that there was a small typo in the recommendations attachment. The very last organization listed shows as a blank in the recommendation. It should have been listed under the not recommended for funding. I apologize for any confusion this may have caused. Today, we're asking that you approve option number 1 to approve the 2021 Small Grants Recommendation as presented, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Caroline? Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. This is just awesome. Such great work.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate it. So I am just curious about the recommendation to remove the prosperity zones as a criteria, only because of when we went through, the commission went through all the work to find the areas of the county that were in greatest economic need based on the demographics. It just would seem that that might be just not a determining criteria, but just something to think about. Is this Estacada, Canby, or that area in Milwaukee? Just could be something to be considered, since those are the areas of the greatest demographic need. So what was the reasoning for removing that as a criteria?
Sure, yeah, my thought process was that the project is done. In those areas, groups have established themselves as the ones doing the bulk of the work within those areas. And while doing the small grants, we came to find out that oftentimes people would just say, yes, we're going to be servicing those areas, but, you know, all of Clackamas County. So it was not a very easy to count as criteria. So yes, if they clearly called Canby, Estacada, North Clackamas, yes, we would kind of give them a little bit more weight to the application, but oftentimes they just said it's Clackamas County-wide. Yeah.
I don't know how
But it's up to the board.
feels about that.
It's up to the board. If they want to continue using this criteria for the next few years, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and maybe not determining, but targeting our resources to those that are in the greatest need, seems like a good priority. And I know that through the work that Martine and the Equity Office, taking what came out of the Prosperity Collaboratives and sort of integrating that throughout has been work. It just seems like an area where it makes sense.
Sure,
I'd love to
it's
hear
up to
from
the
my other
board.
commissioners.
It's up to the board.
Can I suggest you make that decision later next year as you get ready for the 2022 round? Because you don't have to make that call today, and it does not impact this round because you did use that criteria this time, right? So who knows what will change the next 8 months? So maybe bring that back to you
Sure.
as we kick off the next year's round.
Yep.
Carol, I noticed several of the recipients get funds from other sources, including government. My microphone is off. Caroline, I noticed many of the people awarded money here get funds from other sources of government. What was your justification for allocating the small grants to that?
So yes, thank you for that question. One of the questions that we added for the application process this year was, do you receive funding from any other county departments? If so, how much? If so, it's a recurrent situation, and so on. So when reviewing the applications, we put a lot of weight to that question. For example, and I don't want to call anybody out here, but there, organizations like Clackamas Women's Services, Children's Center, they have their ability to fundraise much greater than, say, Colton Helping Hands. And Colton Helping Hands does not receive any other funding from the county but the small grants. And it's, community service, all volunteers and so on. So there was a lot of discussion around those, although there were some of these nonprofits that still receive funding from the other county departments, but say that they had a pretty small request for like a one-time project that we thought we can help you out with that, then we consider those for funding.
And I've noticed here quite a few have received money from the small grants program before. And there's some repeats on here.
Yep.
When you grant these, is there anybody else out there who has not received funds from this grant before that you eliminated because of whatever criteria?
Yes.
Why were some granted funds over others who have not received funding?
It all depending on the way they answered their questions. So for one of them, they received small grants in the past, but not for a couple of years. The application was incomplete. So we need to keep in mind that they took the time to fill out all the questions for the small grants. There were other ones that we felt that, for example, they wanted funding for wages of a person that they want to hire, and we just did not feel comfortable saying that, yes, we're going to help you out with this funding if we're not sure if you're going to be able to sustain it going forward.
So a lot of this is either program support or items. I see freezers, refrigerators,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And I suppose next year when we consider this, we'll talk about criteria again then.
Yes.
Paul, you have your card up.
Yeah, on the, great job.
Thank you.
Caroline. On the topic of about, directing dollars or where we direct them, I just wondered, I think there'd be a value, don't know how hard it would be, and of course, it's always a point in time when you do that, but about a year ago or so, I did a lot of detailed analysis of poverty in precincts around the county. And it's pretty fascinating, but as you get more granular, you get to see where that poverty is in age groups, okay, for example. So when it comes to when we evaluate or how we steer dollars, I guess I just tell you that I feel pretty concerned when you see a number that says 100% of children in a particular precinct live in poverty.
Sure.
That's huge compared to maybe poverty numbers where maybe it's a different population or age groups, for example. But I think, kids in poverty is, to me, it's all important, but, it's far more impactful than it is for adults, I guess. I think adults can fend for themselves a little bit better, perhaps, than children can. And so maybe there's a map. Where I was going to, maybe there's a map we can do that talks about where all those precincts are, and maybe that's color-coded so we can better understand what age group or demographics in poverty and how bad that poverty is.
We used to have that. I remember seeing that.
Is that right?
With DHS at some point, yeah.
Our blueprint for a healthy Clackamas County through the Public Health
Remember,
Department.
That is correct.
It
Yeah.
not only has that, but it has layers of
Yes.
data as far as who's on food assistance, who's free and reduced school lunch, that's how we came up with those 3 areas.
And I would like to add, sorry.
No, that's all
Okay,
right.
I would like to add that I've been working in collaboration with the Blueprints for Clackamas County. We're sharing information back and forth. We've been doing that for a couple of years. And actually, I've been helping them get set up. They're going to be opening up for applications mid-October. So I've been helping them ramp up and open for applications here pretty soon.
Yeah, and I'll like to see what that is, but I guess I was talking about the precinct level versus, because
Yeah.
we heard Estacada, we heard Milwaukee, and
Right.
not all of Milwaukee, not all of Estacada are
Right.
at that level, right? So it's like where in those areas there
Got
are. So
Yeah.
I guess yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So Caroline, I've got a question.
Sure.
I'm trying to look at this, and unfortunately, my screen can't look at the whole
I can't do that.
It's a lot of information.
spreadsheet in one view, but is everything on these 8 pages of this sheet, is this what is awarded? Or where do I see on here what was awarded?
So I did 2 attachments. The first one is the ones that are recommended for funding, and then you go into the second attachment, and those are the ones that you can see applied for grants but are not recommended for funding.
Okay, so I just
separated them.
have in the packet 18 pages without any delineation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm not sure where to look at what's funded and what's not. There's pages 1 through 8, I guess, maybe? Are those the ones that?
Yeah,
Yeah?
The recommendations begin on page
Thank you.
4. And the ones that are not being recommended begin on, I have to scroll down there. Begin on page 12.
thank you.
Okay, and where do you see that? At the top of page 4, I see that in the, okay, so.
Yeah, the best way to see.
The first 8 pages are the recommendations.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
The best column to look at is the amount recommended.
Amount recommended. Got it. Paul, you're genius.
No, staff did this. That's where the genius is.
Any other questions for Caroline at this point? Gary, do we entertain a motion for this?
Yes, please.
I'll accept a motion for approval of the small grants as presented by Caroline Hill.
So moved.
Second.
Paul Savas has made a motion to accept this grant proposal, or grant funding, seconded by Commissioner Schrader. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Christina, would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Schull,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Caroline, thank you for your thoughtful work on this. We look forward to next year.
Yes, thank you very
And
much.
having more diligent discussions on this.
Thank you, thank you.
There's always a need, isn't there?
Yes, it is great.
Well done, Caroline. Thank you very much. Commissioners, back to issues this morning. Your last item is Commissioner Communications.
Commissioners, who wants to speak first? I'll let you decide.
Well, I have a couple of things I
Go ahead,
wanted
Commissioner Ryder.
to talk about. I've been getting information from Workforce. They have, I think I have the email in front of me, and I talked to Gary about this, and he'll make a recommendation. But they're having an Oregon Workforce Partnership Working Together Conference in Bend, Oregon. They have asked us to be a platinum sponsor. I would suggest if we sponsor this at all, we'd be a silver sponsor. There are some public entities, Gary, I checked into it, Clackamas Community College, Temecula Community College, are public school entities that are supporting it. And I don't really know what the will of the board is on this. And I know, Gary, you're worried we're going to open up a floodgate, which is entirely possible.
So the silver sponsorship is $2,000. This event goes up to $15,000 to be a sponsor. You do not have you don't have an actual policy in place on this.
Yes, we
It's up
don't.
to you to do, if you choose to do that. My general recommendation is if you say yes to one, you'll have to say yes to them all. And the floodgates will be open by organizations asking you to sponsor their very, very worthwhile events, of course. But up in the recent past, there's been an informal policy, not written, that you have not given sponsorships to those who have asked. You individually, if you want to contribute, great, but as a county, the prior board did not do sponsorships. But that's your decision to make. I just caution you, when you say yes to one, then how are you going to decide what you say yes to and no to?
We don't really have a set policy for that.
Well, we could support them by attending the conference and
Yeah.
paying the fees.
We can.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
Okay.
I kind of agree with that, Gary. I mean, I've been asked for stuff, and I haven't even brought it forward.
Yeah, I know.
I have not brought stuff
I'm on
forward.
the workforce board, and it's a strange animal because it's public-private, and everybody's asking us for money. I mean,
Right.
at this point in time, too, which is what Gary
I
was
know.
worried about.
And they
So-
think we're loaded because of the ARPA dollars and that whole thing, and that has been spent many times over, I'm sure. Just on asks, not even what commissioners are considering, so. Yeah, any other things, Martha, you want to talk
That's
about?
about it for me
Okay,
right
Sonia,
now.
you have any comments?
Yeah, and in the spirit of sponsorships, I got a request from Urban League to sponsor anywhere from $3,000 to $25,000 for their event. And we all know that the Urban League does some great work around social services, is a statewide organization, has done a lot of great work regarding policy and moving the state forward on important issues. But given our policy, I would say we will, I'll ask Kimberly to let staff at the Urban League know about that.
I appreciate that a
Yeah,
lot.
I
And I
wouldn't-
know that both these are worthy. It's not that they aren't worthy, but boy, our budget can go like that.
Yeah, and I get that. I'm wondering, I feel a little bit conflicted. I am thinking, I
Yeah.
wanted to engage with them on a personal level for a personal sponsorship, or through my law firm, and I don't see that there would be a conflict, but in
No,
the effort of all transparency.
Well, I don't think if any commissioner really wants to donate to an organization with their personal funds or their business funds, I think that's perfectly fine. I don't even think you need to bring it here for us for approval.
Well, I wouldn't have known about this but for my work as a Clackamas County Commissioner, so I feel that, it is worth talking about if
Sure.
those things come up.
And, there's nothing wrong with highlighting the importance of these organizations in a forum like this to let others know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then on the other note, we've talked around about having a retreat. I was going to ask for next week during issues, Gary, if we could put that on the issues agenda, and then just to plug that in commissioners' ears to just be thinking about that for next week.
For issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've been kicking that around. I think we ought to.
So just to put it on the
Yeah.
agenda, and,
Why?
well, I think a retreat is important. I've been really transparent about that, and would
We can
like
discuss it at issues.
to discuss it at issues, and not now, in Commissioner Communication, but talk about it next week. And then lastly, I'm going to be talking with Jill regarding what's going to be happening at the Oversight Committee. And hopefully I'll get everything ready and understood so that I've got it for Monday morning. But if not, we're all going to be meeting as a board, of course, on Thursday. And if I have any clarifying questions or things I want to make sure we all understand, I will bring it up there just for business sake. I felt a little bit like I'm out of the loop because I'm not at the table with Paul and Martha, and I want to make sure we are aligned and consistent. Today really helped get me closer, and Paul and I had a chat this morning, which really helped. So I'm feeling like I'm almost there. I'm hoping I'm almost there I just want to make sure we don't enter into any political landmines since that meeting is on Monday. And then other than that, I don't have any other updates or thoughts.
Well, just
Commissioner
assured them we're fully going to implement the program. I mean, we're on board with the LIP. And we're trying to get the finances in order. And I know that you'll say that at the meeting to do that.
Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, well, just to close that out, as I mentioned several times, including this morning, the only thing that Commissioner Schrader and I are really focusing on is trying to get the revenue or the cash flow to meet what staff has determined. And I said this a couple of months ago, maybe in June, when Commissioner Schrader and I gave our first report. You know, they got direction.
Who's they?
Staff got direction from us as a board of what we wanted to do to meet that need for social services, and that was a $10 million approximately. They laid out the programs, not Martha and I, but they laid out the programs. So at our very first meeting, when Martha and I were there for the first task force meeting, I asked the question, what do you need to make that happen financially? And that's been the goal, our role ever since. So it should have nothing to do with the oversight elements. So whatever Jill's sharing with you is everything.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Well, I'm talking to her because I have some questions that in my mind it doesn't quite fit in with what I've followed from participating on the LIP, being part of the oversight committee, what I'm
Yeah, where I was.
and my conversations with Jill, and then what's happening here, there's disconnects, and so I've got to connect all of those dots. And if I'm going to talk to Jill on Wednesday, if I have further questions, we'll just do it on Thursday.
Yeah, the part that puzzles me, frankly, is when yeah, I don't want to dredge this up, but when you change your vote, Commissioner Fisher, on the dais, that blew me away because that was staff following the direction from this board based on great input that you provided, meaning what you want, what you asked for, they met. Martha and I only provided the funds or the cash flow to get there. That's changing. We were going to come back in September, October with the quarterly financial update of how we get there, how we accomplish what staff's identified. So, and Jill's been very clear that the interpretation of the LIP and the rollout is dependent upon the IGA, which was still not yet defined. That's why I expressed my concern twice today about that delay in getting the IGA completed.
Yep.
So I think the strongest message is the interpretation of the LIP rollout, as I see it right now, and go back to February 2020 and the documents forward, it says right there that the LIP is held in the responsibility of the county or the counties to implement the LIP is to the dollars received from SHS revenues. And to date, that's a smidgen over 400,000. That's it. That's what we're held to. That's the definition today. 400,000. If we get $1 million tomorrow, we're held to 1,400,000. But that's what we're held to. Staff understand that at a far greater detail than I do. Jill knows way more about this than I do. When she speaks, I listen.
Yep.
So I would just implore everyone to realize that we have to rely on our staff. And I think, frankly, the integrity or the veracity of our staff on something this technical shouldn't be challenged. And unfortunately, it is being challenged.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just have different conversations because I ask different questions and I get different answers, and there's just inconsistencies. And as far as me changing my vote, maybe I wasn't clear, but I didn't understand that the allocation that we gave would result in pulling of the procurement process. I understood, because this board is committed to implementing the local implementation plan, been very clear from all of us. So when that happened, and became very clear that the local implementation plan could not go forward with that procurement process because of the allocation, I had no other choice but to change my vote.
Well, my recollection, and that was.
So I didn't know that at the
I
time,
mean,
that I supported that. I
My
didn't know.
interpretation of the reason, and this came up again recently, and I again verified it again, that the reason the RFP was pulled because it was designed on a $24 million award. $24 million didn't show up. No other reason. None.
So it was, we didn't have, every one of us as an elected official have to stay true to where our values and our understanding is. And if I made a mistake because I made an assumption that our statement meant something that it didn't mean, then that's on me to clarify that. And that's all that was, Commissioner Savas.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's created a lot of, because I think people in the public are interpreting that differently.
Well, I don't think it's possible to implement a $24 million plan with $10 million. And that is, obviously, we're in alignment with that.
Yeah, and we talked through that all along. So I think, I just, my update for today, I'm just getting back on track here. My update for today is that all of this stuff that's happening is very taxing. It's taking up a lot of time. I worked through recess. I'm sure maybe you did as well, but I worked through recess. Granted, I did have a little bit more personal time, but not a whole lot. And I just find it troubling when people are unfortunately receiving misinformation and having reactions, and that's somehow results in people being thrown under the bus for trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, well, I would suggest that we not piecemeal the information and provide it to the whole board, because then we can all in real time get our questions answered so everyone can hear them when we're not doing parallel.
That sounds like an accusation embedded in that. I'm sorry.
What was that?
That sounds like there's an accusation
No,
embedded
there's
in
no
that.
accusation. It would just be my recommendation. That's all.
Not sure what piecemealing there is.
Mr. Scholl?
I'll hold the comments of Thursday.
I have no comments to make. This meeting is adjourned.